One of the most infamous draft stories of all time came from the 1989 NFL Draft, when a young man out of Florida State by the name of Deion Sanders was one of the most highly touted prospects in the class. As the story goes, the New York Giants sat down with Deion Sanders at the NFL Combine, and General Manager George Young was about to give Primetime a 2-hour written test to get an idea of his psychology and to see how he would fit with the organization and head coach Bill Parcells. Deion took one look at the test and asked the Giants, "What pick do you have in the draft?" Well, the Giants weren't picking high that year. After finishing 10-6 in 1988, they had the 18th pick in the draft. And when Deion was alerted to this fact, he told the Giants, "I'll be gone before then," and he got up and left. There was no way that Deion Sanders was going to be on the board by pick number 18, as he was extremely confident that he'd be one of the first players taken, and he openly told the team, "I'm not going to be there by the time you're picking. I'm not wasting my time on this test." Sure enough, Deion was 100% right. The Atlanta Falcons had the 5th pick in the draft, and they decided to take him. And the rest is history, as Deion Sanders became one of the greatest and most electric players in NFL history. And even roughly 40 years later, Deion Sanders is still a household name. However, for every primetime in Deion Sanders, where you can tell a team off because you know there's no way you're going to last that long in the draft, and for every instance of a player being able to bet on himself and see into the future, there's tons of others who tried that strategy and suffered a much different fate. Deion is Deion, and that's just who he is. But for the most part, trying to predict where you're going to go in the draft does not work, unless we're talking about you being the literal first overall pick, and it being so obvious where bookies won't even allow you to make bets on it. Case in point, this man right here. This is Vanderbilt cornerback Corey Chavous, and at the 1998 NFL Draft, as you can see by the highlights, he was drafted by the Arizona Cardinals. But even though he was drafted by the Cardinals, he was not expecting to be drafted by the Cardinals whatsoever, especially at the slot where he was taken. Because after Corey Chavous got a bit too cocky during the pre-draft process, he got a slice of humble pie and a rude awakening as he was waiting for his name to be called in New York. And nearly 30 years later, this is the story behind Corey Chavous, the wrong attitude to have before the draft, and a draft day prediction gone horribly, horribly wrong. Make sure you hit that like button down below, subscribe, hype up that video, and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss a single video that we post on the channel, because we post every single day on here about the weird and the wacky history of the NFL with stories like this one they may not have heard of before. So if you like that sort of stuff, then this is definitely the place for you. Thanks in advance for liking and subscribing, and for hyping up the video, and for helping us grow this community. And with that in mind, let's talk about the time that Corey Chavous was most definitely not Corey Nostradamus. But before I talk about what exactly transpired on the day of the draft, we need some context to understand the pre-draft process, and in particular, how good Corey Chavous was coming out of college, and where not only he was expected to go, but where he himself expected to go. Chavous went to Vanderbilt, and during his senior year in 1997, he had 4 interceptions, which was one of the top totals in the SEC. He had a fantastic frame for a cornerback, as anytime you get someone who's got decent speed and is tall enough to match up on anyone at 6 feet tall, you've got yourself a gem. Chavous had good hands, he was super physical, and was going to leave Vanderbilt as one of the top cornerbacks in school history. For some perspective on how dominant he was, he ended his Vanderbilt career with 12 interceptions. At the time, only 3 players in school history had more picks. And today, he's one of just 6 players in the history of the Commodores with 12 or more career interceptions. Combine that with being a team captain and an all-SEC first-team selection by both the coaches and the Associated Press, and Chavous was entering the draft as a highly touted prospect. Vanderbilt wasn't exactly known for its football prowess, nor was it known for getting too many guys into the NFL with high draft picks. In the previous decade, only 4 players have been drafted out of Vanderbilt, and none of them were first-round picks. And it had been nearly a decade and a half since the last defensive back was drafted out of Vanderbilt, with that being Leonard Coleman all the way back in 1984. Chavous was set to make history at the 1998 NFL Draft. However, even though we knew that Chavous was going to hear his name called at some point, and presumably high in the draft with a top 50 selection, Corey Chavous might have been a little too cocky. Because a couple of days before the draft, Chavous was doing an interview with a Tampa radio station. And during the interview, someone asked him what it would be like to play down in Tampa Bay. Keep in mind that this question made a ton of sense, especially seeing as this was a Tampa radio station. For one, the Bucs needed some help in the secondary, as they ranked in the bottom half of the league in forcing interceptions. And only one cornerback on their entire team, Donnie Abraham, had more than 1 interception, with their other starter, Anthony Parker, being on the wrong side of 30. Number 2, the head coach of the Buccaneers was Tony Dungy, and Dungy's defense was extremely similar to the one run at Vanderbilt, seeing as Dungy worked with Woody Weidenhofer, and Weidenhofer was the head coach at Vanderbilt, as well as the defensive coordinator for the Commodores in 1995 and 1996. Tampa Bay had a pick that slotted right around where Chavous was projected to be drafted, and the host asked Chavous his thoughts about playing under Dungy with a team that made the playoffs. And if Chavous said something like, "I'm just excited to play in the NFL, and whoever takes me, I'm going to give them everything I've got," then this is a non-story. If Chavous said something like, "I'd be happy if Tampa takes me because I like what they've got going on defensively," then this is a non-story. In other words, all Chavous had to do was give any of the easy layup answers, and this isn't remembered nearly 30 years later, seeing as this was a layup of a question. Alas, Chavous did not do that, because Chavous, in no uncertain terms, said that there was no way he was going to be on the board by that point. No chance he falls all the way to 23. He's not going to Tampa because he'll be off the board, and someone will have taken him by that point. And yeah, that's probably not the smartest thing to say. There are certain guys that can get away with that. If, for example, seeing as the Steelers need a quarterback, a Pittsburgh radio host asked Fernando Mendoza what it would be like to play in Pittsburgh, Mendoza can laugh it off and give that answer. And I've got no problem with that, because Mendoza is going first overall. Even with Deion Sanders, there was no conceivable universe where he was falling outside of the top 10 and was going to be on the board for the New York Giants near the tail end of the first round. But with Corey Chavous, look, the man was good and he was expected to get drafted, but it's not like the man was a consensus top 5 or top 10 pick. In fact, from every mock draft that I could find, it was entirely within the realm of possibility that the Buccaneers would take him with pick number 23. I went into the archives and found a ton of mock drafts. Here are 2 mock drafts done by reporters for the San Francisco Examiner. In one of them, they had Corey Chavous going 21st to Minnesota, and in the other one, they had Chavous going 23rd to Tampa Bay. There was a mock draft done by a reporter for the Columbia Daily Tribune that had Chavous going 29th to Green Bay. A mock draft done by the Boston Globe had Chavous going 21st to Minnesota. A mock draft done by the Detroit News had Chavous going 22nd to New England. In all the mock drafts I saw, the absolute highest I saw Chavous going was to the Tennessee Oilers at pick number 16, where he'd stay in the state and actually get to play in the same stadium he played his college ball at, since back in 1998, the Oilers were at Vanderbilt Stadium. So while I guess I admire the confidence in Chavous saying all of those things about not being on the board by the time pick number 23 rolled around, did he know anything about the draft? Seriously, did he know anything? Did his agent just completely mislead him? Did no one tell him the Bucks are a team that he could legitimately go to? Did no one tell him, look, you're probably going to go somewhere in the 20s based on what everyone's saying? It'd be one thing if this was a crazy draft slide that no one saw coming. But Chavous being on the board by pick number 23 was somewhat expected. So why he made those comments, I have no idea. And sure enough, by the time pick number 23 rolled around, Corey Chavous was still on the board, having not heard his name get called. The Bucks weren't on the clock by pick number 23, as they had traded their picks to the Raiders for the 34th and 59th picks in the draft. But the entire first round came and went, and sure enough, Corey Chavous had not heard his name called. It would take until the start of the second round for Chavous' long wait to be over, as with the 33rd pick in the draft, the Arizona Cardinals drafted the man. Chavous was expecting to be one of the first defensive backs off the board. Instead, he was the 8th. Definitely got humbled with how the draft played out, even though everyone could have told him that he was likely still going to be there when pick number 23 rolled around. Now, to the credit of Corey Chavous, the man had one heck of an NFL career. After being named a starter during the second half of the 1998 season with the Cardinals, he was a menace on defense, breaking up a ton of passes, and during the wildcard game against the Dallas Cowboys, in what was the Cardinals' first playoff win since moving to Arizona, and their first playoff win since 1947, Chavous was everywhere on the field, as Dallas couldn't complete a single pass without Chavous staring down the receivers. Seriously, it was one of the most dominant performances by a rookie you'll ever see in a playoff game, especially at defensive back. Chavous spent 4 seasons with Arizona before signing a multi-million-dollar contract with the Minnesota Vikings in 2002. And in 2003, he made it to the Pro Bowl after finishing the season with 8 interceptions, which was the 3rd highest total in the league. Oddly enough, that season ended for the Vikings when they collapsed down the stretch and lost their final game on the road against the Arizona Cardinals. Chavous played in the NFL all the way until 2008, so anytime you can play 11 years in the league, and most of them being at a high level, anytime you can be a menace at your position, and you can make it to a Pro Bowl and make millions of dollars along the way, you did something right. Even though his comments about not being on the board by pick number 23 were way off, to his credit, he ended up playing like a man who should have been off the board by pick number 23. Side note, that draft class was absolutely stacked with defensive backs, as outside of Chavous, you had Donovan Darius, the greatest Jaguar safety of all time, Patrick Surtain, Samari Rolle, Pat Tillman, Dwayne Starks, Tony Parrish, who led the NFL in interceptions in 2003, Brian Kelly, who led the NFL in interceptions in 2002 with the Buccaneers, and of course, Charles Woodson, one of the greatest cornerbacks of all time. If you needed a defensive back, 1998 was a darn good year to get one. But the moral of the story is simple. The NFL draft is incredibly unpredictable. Outside of the first pick, you have no idea how it's going to play out. Players slide all the time. Teams make trades out of nowhere all the time. Seriously, did anyone expect the Jaguars to trade up to pick number 2 in 2025 to draft Travis Hunter? Absolutely nothing is set in stone. And if you're a player, you have to treat it like that. If you're projected in every mock draft to go somewhere in the 20s, and people are telling you that you're going to go in the 20s, it's not a good idea at all to go on a radio show and say that there's no chance you'll be on the board by pick number 23. If you do that, as Corey Chavous found out the hard way, you'll wind up with egg on your face. Because in 1998, when Chavous was still on the board by pick number 23 and was still on the board for the Bucs' original draft pick, Chavous was asking himself, what the buck? Check out our live streaming schedule for the next few days. We're live every single day on this channel, whether we're covering a sporting event or playing GeoGuessr or just taking your requests. So make sure you like and subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss a single time that we go live and so that you can join this community. Also, thanks to all our members and our Patreon supporters who get exclusive perks like their name at the end of each video, members-only Q&A streams, and cool emojis to use on videos and during streams. See how you can join this community and become a member or a Patreon member by clicking the link in the description below.